Sally Brown, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing so well. I have a cup of coffee here, and this is the way. So
Excellent.
you are a early literacy specialist expert. I have been thinking about early literacy and education in Idaho. I mean, obviously, it was one of the key points of the legislative session this year. And early literacy is one of those things that has such a strong correlation to success or failure by any societal terms, right? Like we can all say somebody's a failure if they end up in jail or, incarcerated the rest of their lives. That's a failing of, the societal norms. Not somebody who's like, it just doesn't like reading. Like I didn't like reading as a little kid either. But the point is there's such a strong correlation where if you're not literate by the end of grade 3, you have like an almost exponential growth and probability of ending up in the jail system in some manner, right? And not having a lot to contribute. I have been thinking about this problem forever for the last 5 months and trying to flush out. We as Idahoans, I think a lot of people don't like government spending, which is great. And we certainly don't like government waste, which is great. And there's definitely a portion of Idahoans who also don't like the concept of investing in people. And they feel that young people are the responsibility of their parents, which is great. Like I absolutely agree. And my kids are my responsibility. Let's not make any qualms about this. However, okay, I want to run through something real fast. If we have let's say we have K through 12, and I know we don't require K, okay? But let's say K through 12. What's our average spending per pupil per year? It's like 9,000. Let's call it 10,000.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we're really, I think we're 50th in the nation for pupil spending. So we are still, even though we've had increase per pupil spending over the last few years, we're still very low compared to the rest of the nation.
Gotcha. Okay. Let's just say for argument's sake, and again, I just want to throw this hypothetical out and then unleash you onto it. Okay. Let's say it's $10,000 per year. And let's say that is K through 12. All right. And let's say it's consistent. So we spend $130,000 on a person per year. Now we're going to spend that whether or not they're literate in third grade, right?
Correct.
Like we're going to invest in these people. And adding on an early literacy program, let's say that costs $20,000. Right. So it's, you get a couple more years leading up to kindergarten. And so then let's say we spend $150,000. Now that will drop the probability that our $130,000 investment ends up with somebody being incarcerated almost by an exponential amount, right? Like we already invested $130,000. Investing another 20 prevents us or helps us drop the probability that our $130,000 investment will be for nothing later on. And how much is it to be incarcerated per year? Like annually, if we incarcerate somebody, it's like $50,000 or $60,000 per year.
Oh, it's so expensive. I don't even know off the top of my head.
Okay, great.
It's expensive.
Let's say we have no educational system and we have like skyrocketing numbers of people that end up being incarcerated for like 10 years. 10 years at $60,000, surprise, is $600,000. So the return that we're really getting on the initial 130 that drops down the level of incarcerations, and then another $20,000 potential investment drops down incarcerations. We're paying for people somewhere. We're either paying to highly train them or we're paying for the $60,000 to $70,000 a year of incarceration. There's no world where we as Idaho do not pay for people. Now, if we had an incarceration system where we didn't have to pay, I'd be like, yeah, whatever, that's your return, whatever. It's not on me. But we already have the social agreement that we will pay for the incarcerated people. So the idea that we're investing, we either invest in their incarceration or we invest in early literacy. But like, let's not make any qualms about it. We are investing in one of these two options. Help me understand this.
100%. I mean, we are also saving money in special education, for example. When we do literacy right in K3 and we have readers at the end of third grade, there is less likely that there's going to need special education support. So, of course, students with severe disabilities are going to need that support. But there is a whole group of students that if we do it early, that don't need that kind of support. And there are many things. There are all sorts of venues to actually improve literacy rates. And I feel like our state right now, we've been working kind of in silos of all of these good things and really trying to move the needle for literacy. And we're starting to bring it together, which is very exciting because we have teacher preparation programs, we have higher education, as part of that. We have state funding, as you're mentioning. We have professional development for teachers. So all of those things that are coming together are going to make the impact, and it takes time. So sometimes those that are maybe against, oh, we already put money in, we don't need any more. Nothing has shown over the last few years. Why do we need to do something additional? Because it's a long game. It's not something that turns on a dime. So when we invest that money, we have to see impact over years and how that's changing, because systems are hard to change.
Right.
And schools are hard to make it's hard to make big shifts across these large systems. So,
but if I may ask real fast, when you're talking about literacy by the end of third grade, if you initiated an early literacy program for 4 and 5 year olds, you could see the ROI within like a 4-year time frame, right? So like say you put the 4 and 5 year olds through this 2-year program, and then they start kindergarten in when they're 6. By the time they hit third grade, you should see, okay, this we actually reduced. When we had 100 third graders, we would have 15 of them that were still illiterate by the end of third grade. Now we only have 5 of them, right? So we've reduced it by like 66%, or, increased literacy by whatever, 10% or whatever it might be. But like we could do that very conclusively, right?
Yeah. Hypothetically, yes. So thinking about in a preschool situation, because we don't have universal preschool, that's definitely more difficult. But yes, hypothetically, we could do that. So what we're also doing is kindergarten, first, second, third grade, we have to improve the instructional practices in those grades to make it more impactful. So it's not that we know over decades of research what we need to do to teach reading, but unfortunately that went awry. And so the practices that were in many schools weren't the most effective way to teach reading. So there was a lot of wasted time, and there was a lot of students actually not being successful becoming readers.
What were those practices? Is this akin to like the Common Core math where everybody like threw just stack and add out the window?
Well, a little bit different in that it was really controlled by curriculum and programs. So big publishers put out programs that weren't actually aligned to what we know from science and how to teach reading. And it's called balanced literacy. It became a very kind of feel-good way to read. So lots of reading nooks and reading corners, but no instruction on actually foundational skills.
So they were just like, hey, give them a nice fertile field.
Right.
They're just going to become farmers. It's
right.
No, you actually have to teach them how to farm. It's not like they might have all the, like, look, I have a fridge full of food. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean that anybody rolls up and they're making chili killies.
Exactly. That is exactly right. We actually have to explicitly teach them. We have to model those skills that they're learning. So
not just beanbags in the corner with a nice book.
Exactly. And we love great literature, and we want kids to be motivated about reading and to love reading, because that's going to increase their knowledge, increase their ability the more they read. But if nobody has ever taught them how to read, then they're not going to be able to read. Like 50 to 70% of the population must have that kind of instruction. Very explicit, systematic, meaning in order of skills, of phonetic skills, and those build on each other. So there's still this certain population of students that will read no matter what we do. But we're trying to get the biggest bang for our buck. I often use this example as, so a kid struggles learning to read, and they're in school, and they don't want to read. They hate reading. They're avoiding it from, everything they do, right? I'm not a good skier. Do I want to spend every day up on the ski hill because it's something I continually fail at doing? No, I don't want to do that unless somebody is telling me exactly what to do and giving a lot of opportunity for practice and feedback. And so that's what we had to clean up. And so these publishers were making lots and lots of money. And many of our schools across the nation, the majority of our schools had these programs in their schools. And even teachers that were well-trained are now using the program materials that don't align with what they were what they were taught to do. Now, there was
And you're saying this is past tense.
Yes, past tense. Well, there are still many universities that actually don't teach their pre-service teachers how to teach reading well. And it's become quite a battle in the field for sure. But there are many that are doing it well. And what I love that's happening right now in our state is we're getting better materials. Our pre-service teachers are well-trained or being well-trained. But it's the thing we have to remember about teaching reading and teaching, it's very complex. I think the general population thinks, oh yeah, it's easy. You just learn the alphabet, learn how to put those words together, piece of cake. No, there's so many components that we have to attend to. And Dr. Louisa Moats, who's one of my favorite mentors, and she lives in the state of Idaho now. She's in the Sun Valley, Ketchum area. And she wrote an article called Teaching Reading is Rocket Science. And it was a couple decades ago when she first wrote this. And she just released a new one, I think 2020, an updated article. But that is so true. It's so true. It's much more complex than what people think. And teacher knowledge actually predicts student reading outcomes, which there's a handful of studies, even a recent study that shows that connects actually what teachers know impacts how they do in reading proficiency. So that's, I think, something we have to keep in front of us, that we have to invest in teachers. We have to invest in coaching of teachers and professional learning opportunities, because it's not a one and done kind of thing. Like, I can't just teach somebody how to teach reading in a day and call it good. It's like very complex.
And the ROI, I'd have to imagine when you're talking about teacher, essentially enrichment, right? Which is, hey, look, how can we equip this teacher with better knowledge? That's an ROI that just seems so common sense to me, because we're going to pay the teacher whether or not the teacher has this advanced knowledge base, right?
Exactly.
So if you put somebody through, let's say it's a $5,000 enrichment, seminar or program or, whatever it might be, it's like, okay, great. So you put that $5,000 in and you're paying that teacher, let's say $50,000 or $60,000. You're still going to pay them $50,000 or $60,000. They're just more equipped and better off now. So you're getting a greater ROI for every single dollar you do. They're bringing more value to the school and to the system.
Yes, exactly. And what has been interesting is Mississippi and even Louisiana, bottom of the barrel when it came to reading outcomes a decade plus ago. And they revamped their whole system. And one of the big things they did was instructional coaching for teachers. So once we give teachers that knowledge, then instructional coaches are in the classroom helping them to better how to do everything they've learned. So, and that's with even pre-service teachers that are really well prepared. It's overwhelming. And honestly, it's very hard to recruit individuals that want to go into education right now. It's a political hotbed. It's kind of a blame game. Like, it must be your fault that our kids aren't reading. And so it's highly stressful, and it's complicated and complex and takes a lot of time and a lot of brilliant people. And so we really need some excellent candidates in our teacher preparation program, because it makes a difference when we've prepared them well and we continue to help them develop professionally once they get a teaching position.
Yeah, so the only thing I did before I moved here was education. From the week I graduated college until I was almost 40 and then I moved here. And I didn't work for a school system, private or public. I was in private education for college entrance. So I helped students with, the SAT or the ACT college entrance essays. And I never worked for anybody. So I didn't have training. I essentially met a guy that my sister went to school with at Davis. He had started a tutoring company, and he was like, well, here, look, you can have my SAT program and, pay me like 20% of your earnings the first year and 10% the second. And he was like, off you go. I'm like, great. Okay. But again, like I walked out of, his place, and I was holding this thing. I'm like, wait, what do I do? Like, what do I do now? And he literally was like, you see this book? It was like a phone book called the WACAC, Western Association for College Accredited, whatever, counselors.
Yeah.
It was this counselor book. He's like, call everybody in your area and take them out to lunch. And I was like, okay, I guess.
I can do that.
Just like run down the number. I call Nancy Colbert and I call like blah, blah, blah. I was like, oh my God, I had to cold call him. I was 22. I remember my hand, I had a flip phone. I was like, because I didn't know what to do, and I didn't have a coach, and I didn't know. Anyway, so I get into tutoring, and for the longest time, I would tell people, I was like, oh, what I do is really easy. Like a monkey could do it. And other people tried, because they were like, oh, could you help me? I'm like, oh yeah, here, look, this is the binder and this way. And they would try. They're like, wait, how do you do this? I'm like, oh, it's really easy. You just do this thing. And I think it comes back to, there was a course I took at Cal, one of my rhetoric courses, where somebody was making the distinction between a knack and a techne. And they're like, listen, people used to make the argument that being persuasive was a technical thing, and you could just teach somebody these technical little bits, right? And in reality, there was a lot of the ancient philosophers like, no, this is a knack. This is like a thing that you get, like charisma. Like you can't make charisma a technical thing, right? It's like you kind of have it or you don't. And teaching, obviously, I think is a blend of both a knack and a techne, but for people that it comes easily to, for me, it's like, oh, there's nothing really technical about this. But later in my career, I started breaking down. I'm like, what am I doing? Like, why does this work consistently? And why are the outcomes consistent? And why are student opinions consistent? So I started observing kind of the nature of how I would be doing work. I'm like, oh, I actually could break this down to this like really technical piece. You'd still have the interpersonal relationship that you have to, like gain the student's trust and all these things. But there are technical things that you can do, like little, anecdotes and little, order of teaching little things, how you build off. And again, it's one of those things where if I had to do it over, bringing a technical base to, okay, how can I systematize what I'm doing and therefore replicate it quickly? That's one thing that needs to, at least in my opinion, come to the teaching system. And I know it already has. It's not like I'm making some broad comment on the education system as a whole, but when you're doing reading, I think for a lot of people in reading, they've been reading for so long, they don't remember the technical nature of it. They're like, you learn the alphabet and you read. It's like, I know that's what it seems like now, but that's more of like the knack. What we need to talk about is how do you replicate this skill set consistently over millions of children? And that's more of a technical thing. Right.
Well, it totally reminds me of something we're doing this semester, actually, that it's the first time I've tried this. It was a project that we started in January called the Literacy Learning Lab. And I basically wanted to see, can we train up freshman, sophomore students? So education majors and non-ed majors to actually tutor a child in foundational reading skills that are struggling readers and actually make an impact one-on-one. Can we use something very specific, teach them how to do it, and then see what happens? Right. And it's been amazing. It has been literally amazing. And the other thing I was thinking about is my students, when they become juniors and seniors.
And by the way, it worked.
It worked. Yeah. It completely worked.
It's like, here's a 16-year-old, teach the 16-year-old to engage these 20 steps one at a time in order. As they get number 3, you go to number 4. As you get number 4, go to 5. And it's like, they can do this. Yep. And then you're at step 20 and the kid can, read rudimentary stuff.
Now let me clarify. It's freshmen in college.
Oh,
so
gotcha.
So they're 18, 19,
whatever. It's like 3. What's 3 years?
I know. 3 years, nothing. But and it's also a group of first graders that are from a diverse background. Many Spanish speakers it's their first language. Lots of economic challenges in this school. We bus them to campus so they can see themselves on a college campus. And they develop this relationship with this college student. And it's been amazing. It's been amazing. Now, was the learning curve steep? Yes, it was.
Sure.
Did it take them a lot of practice, which we did a January term class. We have that at College of Idaho. And we have specific materials. We have manuals. We teach them foundational knowledge about what it is, teaching, reading, and writing. And then they learn how to use the materials. We give them feedback. And we have a mentor tutor that helps. It's an older college student. And it's been incredible. Now, I always also tell myself that, if I get somebody like you in my teacher prep program and I teach you how to learn to teach reading, done. You have the charisma, you have the connection.
Yeah, I'm in. Like, I got the horsepower.
Right. I just give me a little bit. Right? Like I give you the knowledge and I give you the skill base, just like what you were mentioning. But if I can teach somebody that is not like that to be a good teacher, that's when I can pat myself on the back, because we have to be able to, if I really am saying in a teacher preparation program, I can train someone to be a good teacher. And there are people that are going to be amazing and rise to the top and be leaders.
Sure.
But there are people out there that would be good teachers.
And they want to teach.
Right. And if we can give them those skills, and those are the individuals that are also in our school, we're going to make huge impact.
Right, because the success of a school system cannot be reliant on self-starting rock stars.
Exactly.
Not that I am very much self-starting. I'm not a rock star, but like you can't,
right.
like you can't rely on having these exceptions. You know what the problem was ultimately with me and going to public education, because I wanted to do, I wanted to go into public ed. I wanted to go into like having a classroom and stuff.
Right.
And it ultimately came down to, was like, I was self-started enough as like, listen, if I want to teach, I'm just going to go into the world and teach.
Yeah.
Right. Like where? I don't know. But I know there are people. Yeah. I'm going to figure it out. Same. You're staring at version 2.0 of that. Right. Like this is all like, I don't know, but I'm going to figure it out. And like after beating it up for 3 years, it's like, okay, now I have a thing.
Yeah.
I have a thing that like no one else has. And, almost nobody I know knows how to do it. Well, no, let me revise that. Nobody I know knows how to do it. Right. And it's I'm going to keep working at it thing. You can't rely, like you're going to have to get people that are like, hey, I want to go into public education for security. I want to go into public education because when I was in third grade, I had a great teacher and I want to give that back to kids. You're not snagging people that are like, I'm a CEO or whatever, like, and I'm, that's just a different profile, right? People go into education for all number of reasons. And I think I'm really flirting with sounding disparaging towards our public teachers. I'm not intending to do that.
No,
right?
exactly.
It's just, you have to be able to teach to everybody. If you get somebody who's willing to raise their hand and be like, I'll go through the crucible of undergrad and then teacher certification and all of these things for a low paying job for parents that are always mad at me, to always have like my union representatives bashed by government, all of these different things. And I'll do it happily. Dude, arm that person with anything you got.
Exactly.
Give them everything. Throw everything at them.
And you know what's amazing is I was telling this group of students, I'm like, when you teach this child to read, you have literally changed their trajectory. They have a way to actually make a way in the world. And it is motivational. It is, when you see that, you're like, oh my word, I've impacted this 6-year-old. And I have one student of that group that wasn't an ed major that actually switched to being an ed major at the end of the program. I was like so excited because she is amazing. And cool. She came from a rough background, and she said, I've just never felt like I could go into education because I know the low pay and I need to lift my family out of the circumstances. And she's like, you know what? I'm going to figure it out because I feel like I can do this. And then another little example that I just think was the most amazing thing, we would also do this vocabulary language enrichment piece before we went on to the one-on-one tutoring as a whole group. And we had a Spanish-speaking native speaker translate vocabulary words we were learning. So they would discuss it in English and use the context to put it in a sentence and then also hear it in Spanish. And that tutor was gone one day. And this little guy raised his hand. This little 6-year-old, his English skills at the beginning, not super strong. And he said, I'll be the translator. And he stood up and then described this complex academic word in Spanish. And I was just like, we couldn't have predicted that would happen. It was so amazing. And then you're thinking, it doesn't matter that we don't make any money. It doesn't. Yeah. We're changing the world. For it.
Yeah, you and me, it doesn't matter.
It's fine. Whatever.
Yeah. Hey, look, I would love it if there were like 3 other people doing what I'm doing. It's like, great, I could just step away and do something of value with my life. I don't have anybody in the rear view, unfortunately.
Right.
Yeah. I know. So, okay, you have me convinced that this is a value, but the question really is, what is the rollout plan in Idaho? What are the roadblocks we're experiencing? And not the least of which is a commentary that public education is inherently failing, inherently flawed, is not irredeemable. I had this conversation over the legislative session with this one guy, which is totally, there were many legislators who felt that our public school systems are not up to snuff. Totally fine. And by the way, I've had bad experiences with public school systems as a whole. Some in this state, some out of this state. So it's like, I understand people saying, hey, I don't, and mind you, like I'm mixed, right? Like none of my kids go to private schools. Some go to charter schools, some the neighborhood public schools. So like, I'm not disparaging the whole thing. But the point is, some people came in really saying our school system has failed conclusively. And it's like, well, they're like 200 kids in West Ada that graduate every year with like an AA degree,
Mm-hmm.
as well as, a high school diploma, like at the same time. So it's like they couldn't be graduating with a college degree at 18 through West Ada if our school system is just terrible conclusively. I've also heard these. I had Jeff Carlson in here, who's big into ed tech, and he grew up in Council, Idaho, a town of like 800, right? And he's got a PhD from Harvard. Like the guy is incredibly intelligent and used his base education through Council, Idaho, obviously as a springboard to move on. Anyway, the point is, I had this conversation with one legislator and said, okay, look, let's figure out what's failing. Like, what is it specifically? Because why don't we go? I'm like, I know Superintendent Critchfield. It's not like we're personal friends, but like, I know, like I could call her or write her an email. I was like, let's deliver. Let's make a list of all the ways that this school system is failing. And let's go take it to her and be like, ha, fix this. Right. And I couldn't get anything out of him. It was like, you can't say it's failing if you don't articulate what is it, test scores? Do you want higher test scores? Do you want, is it a bathroom policy, or do you want like this policy, or like what? Tell me, is it graduation rates? Like, and what graduation rate then would be successful, right? Because, let's just iron things out. So you have some people, and again, totally fine that they think this way. I don't know that it's terribly productive, but there are some people that think that the public education system is just doomed for failure no matter what. And that's why we had to insert school choice, another school choice with, public funding of private entities. So what do you see as the main hurdles to getting more early reading enrichment that will ultimately save Idaho money, but obviously cost in the near term? Like, why aren't we doing more of this?
Yes. So I don't work for the Department of Education, so I can't speak to a rollout plan, but I know, because I work with all of those people and we have close relationships, that there are many things in the pipe that are going to be moved forward. And I'm super excited about it. For one, and I totally agree with you. We have to be able to be transparent and say, what are the issues we're seeing? If we can't do that, how can we actually improve it? So the Idaho Reading Indicator that's been into place for over 2 decades. We were one of the first states to actually do this. So screening for reading problems early on.
That's the Idaho Reading Indicator.
Yes, that's the Idaho Reading Indicator. We use different vendors to do that. And it's been revised and adjusted over time. And so that's number one. We have to have screening. We have to be able to see what is actually happening. Are our students, where are they starting from? Are they learning these skills in foundational reading skills, right? So we passed the dyslexia legislation because we saw some gaps with that. We were missing some kids. Some kids were getting into 4th and 5th grade that were not receiving special education services. They also were poor readers or non-readers, and they were been kind of floating through the system. So the dyslexia legislation is kind of the short name for it, but it was really to let's clean up some of that screening so we can catch some of those kids. So that was really critically important. Also, revising the comprehensive literacy plan as a state, basically saying all the stakeholders, what do you need to do to actually improve reading rates? And a lot of people don't know about it. And it was a 2020 release. We're revising it this year. There will be a whole work group led by the Board of Education, and putting scientifically research-based frameworks and practices that need to be in our schools that are required by law, right? So, and the dyslexia handbook was another piece of that. So all of these pieces were put into place that we've got to tackle this problem. We have too many kids failing. So as a state, we're at about 60% proficiency on the Idaho Reading Indicator. That's not okay. Like, we obviously have to do something different. But what's been amazing to see over these last few years when we've started digging in and let's go to the front of the problem and then start cleaning up and get better program materials. That's the other big hole I was saying. Like, my pre-service teachers were going into schools with program materials that didn't support what they learned, and they're not great programs. So what can you do as a new teacher? Right. So some of that is now changing. And then the other thing that I've seen is kind of been a challenge is leadership. So principal leadership, district leadership, that everybody understands this about reading and can support new teachers and practicing teachers in getting in the best systems into place. So that piece. So, and then of course, higher ed, that every university program is actually prepping their teachers appropriately, feeding into the system that they're already trained. All those pieces have to be in alignment to actually make huge gains. But what's been awesome is our front runners, districts and schools that have been working on this, are showing incredible growth. So we have to kind of, like to look at the big picture, right? Like, yeah, we have to look at statewide proficiency rate, but we also have to dig into pockets throughout our state that have made great impact. And people that dislike public school don't ever speak to that. And I want to bring those stories forward because there's some great things happening, and some schools in some really difficult, poor areas have made the greatest gains they've made in years, this past year or two. And so we look at what has been done in those schools. Also, the SMART training program that's run by the state. So that includes coaching and a 2-year cohort when teachers join on. Schools that have lots of smart teachers and coaches are showing bigger gains. So we don't want to jump off the train too soon. Like, we got to look at, we found the problems. We problem solved about how to do that. And now we're getting just better at better trying to bring those things together. So that's the exciting thing. And I think sharing those stories of impact are important. The other thing I also like to remind people, go ahead.
That was kind of the whole point of the film Waiting for Superman,
yeah.
right? That they were like, listen, we have a better system. We have a better mousetrap. Mm-hmm. We just need to roll out this mousetrap. Mm-hmm. And as they had established what that was and how they had been able to, show improvement, they're like, we just need to roll this out everywhere. Mm-hmm. And then they were having a problem, like rolling it out. Right. But they're like, listen, this is not just charismatic teachers. This is not just, people, a small collection of like hyper engaged parents. It's like, no. These are average people and average teachers that are being hooked into a system that works far better. Mm-hmm. We just need to get that system moving out instead of the system we have in place currently. And that's where the friction came from.
Right. And what I also like to remind people is people that are kind of against public school systems or say, well, private schools. Well, yet private schools aren't really doing it right either. So if we look at foundational reading skills, who's attending the private schools? Often middle income and high income individuals. So that's not really a fair comparison. And and we don't know. Right.
We don't even have data. This was one of the greatest things. Like, you have people, and again, totally fine. People are like, we need our public schools. Somebody was advocating, somebody who worked for like a think tank came in for an interview and was like, we need to have like scorecards for schools. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And he was like, yeah, it would be great if I look at a school and I have this like metric that tells me all this information about the school. I'm like, yeah, I guess that sounds reasonable, right? Like, why wouldn't it be like, okay, show me, literacy rates, show me, graduation rates, show me, all kinds of details. It's like, okay. And then for private schools, it's like, oh, no, we don't ask them anything.
Right.
It's like, well, how do you know they're better? They're better.
Yeah.
It's like, wait, how do you know? And they're like, because parents feel better about it. I'm like, but what are the scores? They're like, we don't know. I'm like, I'm not even saying they're not better. I just want to know how you know. Yeah. And the answer is, we don't.
Right.
And, for instance, there's a very well-to-do, or not very well-to-do, but very well-known, a school, Bishop Kelly in the area. It's a private Catholic school. Mm-hmm. They do not have superior SAT results to Renaissance High School. Mm-hmm. And Renaissance High School, obviously, these are two academically, parent engaged, all kinds of things. Like, there's no magic sauce when you liberate people from the public school. It's like you're still saddled with the problem of, do you have the right system to teach these things? And are you initiating them?
Right. And 100%, we have to use the data to actually impact what our choices are. So that's what a solid school system looks like, and a multi-tiered systems of support. Like, we look at the data. Are the kids moving? If they're not moving, if their reading skills aren't improving, what are we doing to actually change that? And we have that in place. In practice, we're still fine-tuning how to do that in the best possible way. But it's incredible because there are some districts in our state that are like at 85% and some that are at 30% proficiency. So obviously there are some good things happening, and we want to get to 90. or 95. Yeah, there's a population of students that have more severe disabilities or severe difficulties with reading that aren't going to be served in a whole class situation and need specialized intervention and support. But
they're always going to be like, I hate that people get, it's like, say you have 60 or 70% proficiency in a specific school district. And they're like, well, obviously it's the teachers. And it's like, that's interesting, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because are we saying it's the teachers over everything else in that 8-year-old's life? Like, is it the teacher
Mm-hmm.
over the drugged out parents?
Mm-hmm.
Is it the teacher over the living in a tough shed?
Mm-hmm.
Is it the teacher over all of these other things where it's like, that doesn't make sense. The teacher's here to deliver a system. But like I remember, you know, I worked in the cafeteria in middle school and elementary school because I went through periods of time as a young person where I didn't have food at lunchtime. And then I found out I could get a job and I was like, hell yeah, sign me up because I got a free lunch. And I'm like, yeah, I'm all in, man.
Mm-hmm.
And was that the teacher's problem that I was like eating my friend's crust off the pizza because like I didn't have lunch until I, you know, got a job in the cafeteria? No, that wasn't their problem. Or that like my lunch consisted of tater tots and ranch dressing that somebody didn't want to eat. It was like, no, that's not, like I was essentially like a human seagull. It was like whatever the scraps were. And it's like, it's a bummer to imagine, it's a bummer to imagine like little me. It's like, God, man, I really did that. Like that was my life. But it's also a bummer to imagine teachers being blamed for that.
Right.
It's like, it wasn't their fault. It wasn't their fault that I wasn't, you know, getting the things that would, you know, put me in an optimal position to learn.
Right.
And yeah, like we shouldn't let them off the hook. I'm glad people didn't like give up on me, but I also don't think they should be blamed for my plight.
No, exactly. And the thing is that what we know about good reading instruction is that it's effective for all sorts of kinds of different types of students,
right.
Low income, high income, middle income, diverse language learners, you know, so all of those things. So and I'm very passionate about actually impacting that kid, like you're saying, the kid that has everything against them, everything going against them. And I know a number of teachers that do that really well. And it's in public ed that are not making great money and are sacrificing their weekends to prepare for Monday, you know? So, but I agree, we shouldn't blame it all on teachers. And that's why I feel like as we improve these systems, we're going to give better supports to the teachers. So they're going to impact those kids that are coming from places of not privilege in a better way, right?
You arm them to help more people.
Exactly.
And I remember a couple of years ago, I did these school board interviews. I think it was like 23 or something like that. Anyway, some school board interviews for West Ada, and one individual came in who was running for trustee, and God bless him, man. Like we need people running, and he didn't actually win the vote, but you know, he put on this campaign and he raised money and he was trying to do what was right. He came in, older gentleman, saying like, well, look, everybody's failing this test. I'm like, okay, which test, who's everybody, and what do you mean by failing? And what he was trying to say is that there was a niche rating, NICHE.org or something, that had rated proficiency in Idaho at like 60% or something for math, right? It was something of that nature. I'm like, well, there's not a single test that everybody takes. It's not like the kindergartners take the same test or whatever that like seniors take. But what you're saying is essentially we have too few people that are being ranked as proficient. Now, even though Idaho was ranked at like 60%, it also got a rating of an A. Okay, so like you have to look at comparatively across 50 states and territories, we don't have like, it's not like everybody's at 90% proficiency and here's like lowly Idaho. It's like, these are problems nationwide that people are trying to address. So when you talk about a 60% proficiency or something, it's like, yeah, and we're trying to get it to 65, which is actually incredibly difficult. Like
Yeah.
the best education systems in the country only are at like 67 or 70% proficiency
Right.
because of all the variables with dealing with human beings and children.
No, exactly. And so that's why it's also important to look at growth indicators. Sometimes we only pay attention to that proficiency
Yes.
because we're like, okay, our goal is to do this.
Yeah, we want to be at 90. We're only at 60. Yeah, but
Right.
we were at 55 3 years ago.
Right.
Like we went from 55 to 60 in
Yeah.
3 years.
Right. And look at the growth. That
Right.
kid made like 3 grade level jumps in 1 year.
Right.
Now that's incredibly hard. That's hard work on the kid. That's hard work on the teacher. That it's like all around, right? And so I was talking to a principal a few months ago, one of our partner schools, and I said, everybody wants to come to your school. All my best pre-service teachers want to come to your school. What is it about your school? You've created this climate that everybody wants to be there.
Right.
And he's like, you have to let them go and be able to make some decisions on their own as grade level teams, but also that let's set reasonable goals and look at our growth. If I only as a leader put this goal that's so far out there that a lot of my teachers are going to say, there's no way. There is no way. But if I say, what is our growth? What is our growth last year? What are we going to do better? And every year you're leveling it up. And it's made a huge difference. That school gets our best candidates. They want to be there.
This is like life though.
Mhm.
Like I just moved to a new spot, and it's a bigger property than I've ever owned before. It's like an acre and a half. It's not
Yeah.
crazy, I know, but like it's a
Still.
lot for little old me
Right.
who's like,
Care for
I
this
don't
property.
know, like I've never owned a rototiller. Now I own one.
Right.
I got a driving mower. And
Right.
it's like the 0.3 acres of the property is manicured and the rest is just hard as rock, weeds, goat heads. It's a train wreck.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is going to be a multi-year project to get the whole thing up to, where I think my wife and I and my family would really benefit from. And like, I've carved out this little, half-acre area where it's like, I'm starting here and I'm starting here by doing this one thing. And this one thing is going to take this amount. And every day it's like, oh my God, here I am like rigging these weeds. And that's how you make progress.
Yep.
Even though in the larger system, it's like, okay, it's going to take 2 years, which is going to be what? Like 730 days or something. It's like, it's going to take, but I'm like, I'm 3 days down, right? I started, we're getting there. And that's the only way you get to day 730 is if you get after the first 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 days. And same thing, anything in academics is like, you're not going to get there unless you start, and have reasonable goals. Don't try to be to the 725th day on day 5. Try to be on the day 5 on day 5.
Exactly.
Like, if you want to get ambitious, try to get to day 6 on day 5. But like, don't get crazy.
Exactly. And the other thing I've been thinking about the last couple of years is you can't do it by yourself either, right? It has to be a collaborative effort. So getting partners, just like you were explaining, the partners that are coming to the table, because all of those individuals can move the needle, and together we're going to move it greater. If we're trying to do solo work and we're always accusing somebody else of why we got here, or it's so-and-so's fault, for teacher's fault, principal's fault, Department of Ed's fault, higher ed's fault of the problem, we'll never get there. We've got to look at what each of those individual stakeholders can bring to the table, and that's going to make huge impact.
Huge impact.
Yeah.
So as this gets rolled out, how is the data getting collected? Right.
Yeah.
And how is that getting expressed? Because I had this great conversation with Rod Grammer, actually. It was during the legislative session. He's a former president of Idaho Business for Education. Because obviously, like, if we want to know relevant education systems, or relevant education outcomes, we should ask people that are hiring our students, like, hey, what's relevant to you? Like, we're not just going to teach people stuff that's important in the abstract. Like, if we want practical stuff, what do you need? And again, that's a really important question to ask.
Right.
But again, in communicating with these people, it's like, look, no matter what we do, none of it is going to matter if we have a culture of distrust and dislike of the education system. If we're making great strides in education and we have great relevance, that will not matter to the general populace if the general populace is constantly saying, like, we're consistently failing. So like, how are these data points getting communicated
Right.
to people, to the state.
Yeah. So the Idaho Reading Indicator, actually, there is a huge spreadsheet that actually is posted online on the Department of Education website that you can download and look at any district. You can look at the state of the whole, you can look at the district level, you can look at the school level to see the proficiency rate.
Is there anywhere online where we could get the number of hits to that spreadsheet? Like 5 people downloaded it,
I'm
and
sure.
you and me were 2 of them.
Right. I'm sure the department
You just
could do
say
that.
like, there's a spreadsheet, and it's like,
I know.
and there's like, and
See,
it's online.
That's the thing, is people don't know where to find it.
Right.
But people making decisions should know where to find it and should be able to access it for sure. So I would say government leaders go there 100%. I think we have all of these measures out there, but we haven't been able to communicate in it those results in a good way. I think on the school level, what many districts they're required to do, and some districts are doing it better than others and have rolled it out faster than others, is when your child takes the Idaho Reading Indicator K3, K5, you get a parent letter that says this is where your child is doing well, this is where they need additional instruction, and they get intervention hours based on those needs if they're having some gaps, right? So, but at the school level, communicating actually growth on the school level, I think, is critical. I don't think we do that well right now. Some individual principals do that kind of on their own, but as a system, we're not great at that. So being able to communicate some of that in a more easily digestible way, I think, can be really, really helpful. What we're doing in higher ed is our undergrads have to pass foundational knowledge about literacy across our 5 literacy standards at the state level. And we want to share that with the board regularly. We're not required to, but we want to, because we want to show this is what we're doing to prepare teachers for this. And then at the during the legislative session, everybody talks about the IRI scores, by the way, because you hear one and then it's just like, well, this is the big problem. So, but we aren't as good as communicating at the smaller level, at the district level. Like, we can look it up, like you said, but who does?
Right. And people are less concerned with the progress of a district, and they're more concerned with my particular school in this year right now.
Right.
Nobody's looking at it as a whole and being like, wow, we've moved like 4 points in the last 5 years. It's like irrelevant to me if I have a second grader. I'm like, no. I just want to know what I'm going to get out of this right now. Well,
and of course, as a parent, you care about your kid.
Right.
And that's what I'm going to look at, is my kid. What was my child's progress? And were their needs served? Or was there something awry and they actually didn't make progress?
Right.
And I think there are many schools and districts that are doing that quite well. I wouldn't say it's across the board, but I think many are. But parents aren't sharing that information necessarily unless there's a problem. Usually we hear about it when there's a problem. So the problems are raising to the top, but perhaps some of the celebrations we're not hearing about.
Right.
So I think that's an important part of accountability.
Yeah, but nobody reads the 5-star on Yelp. They go straight to the 1-star. There's a phrase for that. There's like that's an actual studied thing, like why we're inclined to look for the one bad thing, and we put undue weight on one bad review instead of like the 9 positive reviews.
Yeah,
it's
totally.
Like somebody told me, they were like, it's the scratchy towel phenomenon. It's just like you go to a review of a hotel and you scroll down until you find the person, because there's always somebody who says the towel is scratchy. It's like, what? Okay. Yeah. And it's like, people are like, oh, I don't know, man. Like the towels are not. It's like, it's a 5-star hotel. Right. Or whatever. Yeah. No. I never understood why Michelin was only 3-star.
Right.
It's like, you're screwing me up. Can you just be consistent? And then they give you a scale of 1 to 10. I'm like, oh my God. So we have 3-star, 5-star, and then 1 to 10. Like,
right.
And
That's
then you get an A through F.
Yeah.
With no E.
Right. I need an E, please.
I need an E. Can I buy an E?
It's hard to be perfect.
Oh my God. Sally, I so appreciate this. I would love to keep checking in, and like maybe next time, if you'd be willing to come back, I'd love to, accumulate that data, like the data points we're talking about in different districts, and maybe we pick like 3 or 4 of the bigger districts in Idaho and then 3 or 4 really small rural districts, because there's also a mischaracterization of rural schools being ineffective schools. And it's
Right.
like, no, they're just underfunded and neglected, but they still have like good teachers and stuff,
Right.
like people that really care.
Right.
There's also less politicization on the local level when you deal with rural schools, because that's Jan. She's my neighbor, and she's like teaching my kids, and Jan's a nice person.
Right.
Whereas
right.
here, you're more in large school districts. You're more removed from those that are actually administering the school, so you're more suspect of them, right? Like you don't have that community connection. Anyway, but going through this and identifying districts that are making progress, or districts that have had great turnarounds, and it's like, okay, what happened? I had a come on, it was Andy Grover from okay, I can never get this one right. It's the Association of School Administrators in Idaho.
Yeah, I can't
Idaho
get it right
Association
either.
of
It's something
School
like that.
Yeah, it's like IASA.
Yeah.
Anyway, and that's the administration that overlooks like the school boards and the superintendents and things of that nature. But he was talking about working within I think it was like a Melba school district, and they had turned it around when he was a superintendent there. That district got turned around from the lowest quartile to the highest quartile in about 4 or 5 years. And he was talking about exactly what you are talking about, which is like, look, we looked at our systems, we looked at the mission, we looked at everything we were doing, we trimmed all the fat and got back to these core tendencies of administration, and we focused on that. And within 4 or 5 years, the district did an about face.
Yeah.
I think there's too much of a thought that it's like, if it's broken now, or if it's ineffective or not as successful as I want, it has to stay that way. And in reality, our districts are malleable. Like our systems are malleable. That we can turn around results, and we just need to figure out how to do that and then apply that.
Exactly. No, exactly.
So let's do that again. Like, come back. Let's have that conversation if you'd be game. If this wasn't too painful, we'll go from there.
Excellent.
All right. Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate you.
Hey, thank you.